So the theme of this conference is the future of Rwanda, with or without the current president, Paul Kagame. He's now serving his second time. In 2017 there will be new elections. According to the constitution, he cannot serve for a third term. So the question is, what will the regime do? Will they try to change the constitution? Will Kagame appoint a follow-up, or will something completely different happen? A lot of questions. Luckily, we have 5 excellent speakers who will try to give some answers, and I will start with Kris Berwouts. He is the former CEO of EurAc, and I think he can introduce himself far more better than I can. And I would like you to ask to go to the cafe, or do you want to do it like this?
Well, if it's the same for you, I prefer to.
Okay.
It's more comfortable, of course. In 2 words, my name is Kris Berwouts. I studied African languages, African history, and I've been working on Central Africa for the last 15 years, Rwanda, Burundi, and Congo, which means that some people consider me as a specialist on some themes, most of it basically democracy and security, let's say. For the last 1 year and a half, I'm working as an independent analyst, independent writer, independent consultant. I used to go very often to Rwanda between 97 and 2000, and since then I haven't received the visa anymore. I have absolutely no reason, no idea why. But well, okay, maybe this contribution will help. Kagame leads the RPF since 90, vice president since 94, became president in 2000, and then so he was elected 2003, re-elected in 2010. Will he or will he not stand in 2017? Soon after the elections, there has been a lot of speculation going on. And recently in February, Kagame said, I'm not interested, I don't need a job. At the press conference, at the end of the press conference, he said, if there is a signal of an appeal or an appeal of the population, of course, they decide, and then I might go on. Which is blowing cold and hot at the same time. In 2010, with Anneke and many people, with Victoire also, we followed from very close by how the elections went. 3 parties were challenging him, the Social Party, the Green Party, and UDF. At the end of the day, none of the 3 parties were able to present their candidate to the electorate, and ultimately Kagame has been elected with a landslide victory against 3 other candidates who were not really representing, not a political movement, not an alternative. So the whole electoral system, let's say, was under a complete control of the regime, and throughout the years Rwanda has been reduced to more or less a one-party state, and there's not much room for public debate, political debate, no room for alternative ideas, and no room to develop change. So not Victoire, not Bernard Ntaganda, not Abineza were candidates to the elections, and Kagame was elected, re-elected, and challenged. Despite this, 2010 was something I call the annus horribilis of Kagame. There were many things. There was a lot of pressure because of the other candidates, the 3 real opposition candidates in the beginning of the year. In the second part of the year, the focus of the stress, the focus of the pressure changed when Kayumba Nyamwasa, one of the key people within the regime, has left the regime and decided to join Colonel Karegeya in South Africa, which meant that all of a sudden Kagame was facing a challenge which was not coming from his traditional enemy, the opposition parties, but from within, people from his own inner circle. In the months after the departure of Karegeya, who was already in South Africa, and Kuma Nyamasa, a lot of high-profile people of the regime left Kagame and organized against him. In the first phase, the impression was that they were trying to set up a military initiative from the Congolese soil against Kagame, and trying to organize alliances with different armed groups that happened to be there and which are still there. It didn't work out. By the end of 2010, that idea had proven to be not operational, let's say. And then the people around Karegeya and Kuma Nyamasa started another opposition party outside the country. But it really shook Kagame and his regime into the heart. The enemy was not outside the regime, but it came from within. And then the third shock to the regime in 2010 was, of course, the panel expert report on the mapping report, which has investigated the human rights violations within Congo between March '93 until June 2003. The report was finally, I think, published around end of September, early October, but it leaked already in August, and it contained very heavy accusations. It labeled the violence committed by the RPF as systematic violence that, if proven by a competent court, because the panel had not the competence to call it genocide, but if proven by a competent court, it could be classified as genocide, which was quite heavy. So 2010 was a difficult year, and then what you have seen afterwards was a change of generation within the regime. A lot of people followed Karegeya and Kuma Nyamasa, and then you see that the people around Kagame, that this group is changing. People have a different profile. They become less military, more technocratic. They have higher education and all. They're more bilingual than they used to be. So, one way to put it is the generation that grew up, the generation that materialized Kagame's Brave New World has been replaced by the people who grew up in it. And it's interesting. So you see the people who might have connections or might be influenced by Kuma Nyamasa. You see that they lose space. They are replaced by a different type of people, a different generation, more intellectual, less military people. It's an interesting development, and then Kagame, who lost a bit of his control in 2010, easily gained it back in 2011. So, and then of course, the impression you have is that the regime is really trying to think and materialize a scenario of change. That there is a discussion about how to replace Kagame. Kagame is interested in is not interested to become a new Museveni, to become a new Mugabe, people who are frozen to their chair, people who don't want to move. Kagame, there are many signals of that, is interested in a more Buyoya type of exit. Buyoya, the former president of Burundi. So you leave, you remain influential on the national level, be it with a lower profile, and on the international level, you can play a role, international appreciated role as a mediator in different conflicts. There have been signals that Kagame is interested in this. Of course, the man is in charge for so long, so that's not very easy to materialize such a scenario. Some people believe that he was generally interested to relieve power. Other people thought, well, maybe they are seeking somebody to have a sort of Medvedev, Putin kind of leapfrog scenario. From different sources I have in and around Rwanda, at some moment, and different names have been circulating on who could be a replacer for Kagame. A name that I often heard is Richard Sezibera, who's at this moment, I think he's still at this moment, the Secretary General of the East African Community. He has been Minister of Health. He has, I think he grew up in Burundi. He studied in Kampala. He studied in the States. He has been ambassador in the States. He's someone with the diplomatic and political skills who could do that. Someone else, another name you often heard was Donald Kabiraku, who's the president of the African Development Bank, and who's almost incarnating the economic miracle of Rwanda, let's say, after the genocide in 1994. Has been Minister of Economics. And then, of course, you had 2012, which was a difficult year with the crisis in East Congo around the M23 movement. Of course, the suspicion was very soon on the table that Rwanda, in one way or another, was supporting M23. And then, again, a UN panel, the expert panel, submitted a report, a final report in October, and it was very harsh towards on Rwanda's contribution to M23, Rwanda's implication in M23, and I think the reaction of the international community went further than what Kagame is used to, and than what Kagame had expected. His most loyal partners, the United Kingdom, the United States, Sweden, Germany, and Holland, and other countries too, but those five are particularly strategic because they have been, and they still are, loyal partners, and they have cut or reduced or suspended a substantial part of their support to the regime in October. We're now 6-7 months later now, and some of them, most of them, are coming back on that. But it shook the regime. So I think that Rwanda was effectively working on a change of regime within the regime, a change of head of state within the regime, without putting question marks around that regime, but confirming the change of profile from a military regime to a more political regime. And that is questioned, I think, by the damage, by the diplomatic damage that Rwanda has suffered after the M23 crisis. So I could go on for hours, but those people get nervous.
I think everybody is looking what will happen in 2017. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, it all depends on how strong Rwanda feels facing its allies. Rwanda has been questioned and has been punished really by its most loyal allies. And then the question will be, how comfortable does the regime feel? What I see until now is that the replacement of the old guard, the military people, etc., by newer people is going on. Recently, people like Musoni is one of the strongmen within the regime. He is fired. It's relevant, and it also shows a bit of unrest within the regime. So it's hard to forecast what will happen. But at this moment, when you see all those older people leave, then I think how comfortable would it be for Kagame to be the last surviving dinosaur in Jurassic Park? You know, that's my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Not
you.
so comfortable.
Okay. There's room for questions after all the speakers have said something, because otherwise there won't be any room for the last speakers.